The grand hall echoed with a sense of mystery and power. The massive stone walls were adorned with intricate alien symbols, glowing faintly in the dim, otherworldly light. A vast expanse of dark blue banners and golden tapestries hung from the ceiling, each one telling a tale of victory, conquest, and the long history of the alien race. The throne, high and imposing, was placed at the far end of the room, surrounded by the hushed whispers of armored guards. All eyes were on the human who stood at the center of it. He was a young man, out of place in this magnificent and intimidating palace. He had been summoned to this alien world, brought here through a journey none could fully comprehend. In his heart he carried fear, a fear of the unknown, of facing a creature so far beyond human understanding. The alien queen, ruler of this vast empire, awaited his presence, but the young human knew very little about what she wanted from him. The queen's presence was legendary. Her power was unmatched, her wisdom unparalleled. She ruled not just a planet but an entire system, and her authority spread far beyond the reaches of what humans could fathom. Few had ever dared to even speak in her presence, let alone stand before her. And yet here he was, trembling but determined. A voice boomed through the hall, causing the human to snap his focus back to the present. "You may approach," the queen's commanding tone ordered. With an anxious breath, the young man stepped forward, his shoes echoing sharply against the cold stone floor. The air was thick with a palpable tension. The queen's eyes trained on him as he walked, his heart hammered against his chest. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the throne room seemed to stretch before him endlessly. There, perched upon the magnificent throne, sat the alien queen. She was everything the stories had claimed. Tall, imposing, and beautiful in a way that transcended human comprehension. Her skin shimmered with an ethereal glow, hues of blue and silver radiating from beneath her ornate armor. Her golden crown rested lightly upon her head, and her eyes, bright like the stars, locked onto him with unblinking intensity. A single glance from her could make even the most fearless crumble. "Speak," she commanded, her voice both soft and sharp, resonating through the space like a melodic thunder. "What brings you here, human?" He swallowed hard. Words seemed to fail. Him. This was it. The moment he'd been preparing for, the moment that would decide his fate. And yet in this moment of terror, he felt a strange clarity. He had one chance, one bold opportunity to make a lasting impact. He had heard the rumors. He had studied the ancient texts and legends about this alien queen. They said she had grown tired of her endless rule, tired of the constant war and struggle. They said she craved something new, something different. Perhaps that was it. Perhaps that was his way in. "You don't know me, but I know what you want," he said, his voice coming out steadier than he expected. The words felt foreign on his tongue, but there was no turning back now. "I know that after centuries of ruling, you've grown bored. I know that you seek something beyond power and conquest." The queen raised an eyebrow, her face expressionless, but her eyes held a glimmer of curiosity. "Go on," she said, her tone signaling neither approval nor disapproval, just an open invitation to continue. The human's heart raced faster, but he pressed on, his voice growing bolder as he spoke. "I offer you something no one else can. Not power, not riches, but a partnership, an alliance. An alliance between you and a species that has not yet fully realized its potential. You seek a new challenge, something fresh, something that will ignite a fire within you again. I offer you that. I offer you the potential of humanity, to evolve into something far greater than what you've seen before." The queen's lips parted, slightly, as if she was about to speak, but she stopped herself. For the briefest moment, silence reigned between them. The guards stood at attention, unmoving. The human's words hung in the air, suspended between hope and impossibility. He took a deep breath, ready to finish his proposal. "You've had control for so long, but what if you could lead a revolution? A revolution that doesn't require weapons or armies. I offer you the power to reshape the future, to create something that will endure long after you're gone. I'm not asking you to bow down to me, but to join forces. Together we could achieve something unimaginable." The queen tilted her head slightly, examining the human with an intensity that made him feel exposed. He felt as if his very soul was being scrutinized. Was he mad? Had he just offered a foolish idea that would lead to his immediate demise? The weight of the queen's gaze felt unbearable. She said nothing for several moments. Her silence felt like an eternity. The human stood there, his legs beginning to shake as doubt crept into his mind. Had he made the right choice? Had he miscalculated? His heart beat harder with every passing second. Then, unexpectedly, the queen let out a soft chuckle, a low, rich sound that reverberated in the chamber. It was not the reaction he had expected. He thought she would reject him, dismiss him as a fool. But no. She laughed. Her laughter was not mocking but filled with amusement, almost as if she had found something incredibly amusing about the human's boldness. She leaned back on her throne, eyes narrowing, a smirk tugging at her lips. "You truly are a bold one, human," she said, her voice filled with amusement. "I must admit, I have not heard such an offer in a long time." The tension in the room shifted. Was this a sign of approval? Was she entertained by his proposal, or did she find it laughable? The human stood frozen, waiting for her response. Would this bold move mark the beginning of an unexpected alliance, or would it cost him everything? Her eyes gleamed with a mix of curiosity and something far more dangerous. The queen finally spoke, her voice laced with intrigue. "I accept your offer," she said simply. The human's heart skipped a beat. Was this truly happening? Had she truly accepted what he had proposed? The silence that followed was deafening. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. "I accept your offer." For a moment, the human could not comprehend them. He blinked several times as if trying to decipher the meaning behind the queen's words. Her voice had been steady, calm, yet there was something in it that sent a chill down his spine. It was not a response he had anticipated. In fact, it was the exact opposite of what he had been preparing for. He expected rejection, scorn, maybe even a swift punishment. But not this. Not acceptance. The queen's piercing eyes studied him, as though she were observing every reaction, every muscle twitch, every expression on his face. The room, once thick with tension, now seemed to pulse with a different kind of energy. A quiet unease spread through the chamber. The guards, who had been standing at attention, exchanged glances, their faces unreadable. The queen's inner circle, standing silently in the shadows, appeared unmoved, but the flicker of curiosity in their eyes betrayed their true feelings. No one had ever dared to challenge the queen in such a way, let alone offer an alliance. The human stood frozen, unable to process the situation. He had been expecting a calculated response, one that might involve some form of a test, perhaps a challenge to prove his worth. Instead, he had been granted something far more dangerous, the queen's interest. And with it came the weight of 1,000 unspoken implications. What does that mean?" he asked, his voice coming out much shakier than he had hoped. His heart was pounding in his chest. "Why would you accept such an offer? I'm just one human, one small, insignificant being in this galaxy. You have everything. Power, technology. Your people follow you without question. Why would you want something like me?" The queen's lips curved into a slow, enigmatic smile. She leaned forward slightly in her throne, her gaze still locked onto the human with unnerving intensity. "Do you think I don't know that?" she replied, her voice low but commanding. "That's exactly why I am intrigued. Power is meaningless when it becomes stagnant. It's easy to crush what is beneath you, but what happens when you've ruled for centuries? What happens when there is no new challenge, no new victory to savor? You grow bored." The human felt a chill run down his spine as she continued. There was a cold truth to her words. In her eyes, he was not just another human, he was something more. Something that could shake the very foundation of her empire. "I have ruled this galaxy for longer than your species has existed, human," the queen said, her voice almost wistful, as if recounting a long-forgotten memory. "I have conquered worlds, built empires, watched entire civilizations rise and fall, and yet with all of that power I find myself unfulfilled. You humans with your boundless potential have something I've never experienced, a hunger for progress. You are not content with the status quo. That's why I am interested in you. The human's breath caught in his throat. The queen's words stirred something deep within him, a mix of fear and awe. The weight of her acceptance suddenly felt heavier. This was no longer about an individual offer. This was about something far more complex, something that could change the course of history. So, the queen continued, her eyes narrowing with a hint of amusement. Tell me, what exactly is it that you offer me, human? You claim that you can help me achieve something greater. But can you? Can you deliver on your promise? The human had no answer at first. He had spoken out of instinct, daring to make a proposal without fully understanding its consequences. But now, standing before her, the enormity of the queen's eyes glinted with interest. Evolution, she mused, her fingers lightly tapping the armrest of her throne. What do you know of evolution, human? Do you truly believe that you can reshape a species with nothing but your words? The human took a deep breath, his mind racing. He had no direct answer to her question, but he could see that this was the path he needed to follow. I don't know everything, no. But I know this. Your people are tired. They've been fighting, for centuries, living under the shadow of an endless war. What if we could offer them something else? What if we could give them hope for a future they never thought possible? The queen's gaze softened slightly, though there was still an air of skepticism about her. And how do you propose we achieve that? What makes you think a single human like yourself can be the catalyst for such a change? The human swallowed, feeling the weight of the queen's scrutiny, but he knew he had to push forward. I may not have the power you do, but I have the potential to inspire. I have the capacity to challenge old ideas and introduce new ones. And I can show you a way to bring your people into a new era of prosperity. I am not asking for your power. I am asking for the opportunity to change the world with you. The queen studied him for a long time, her gaze piercing, searching for any sign of insincerity. The silence between them stretched for what felt like an eternity. The human's heart raced, and for a moment, he thought he had failed. Finally, the queen spoke. You are bold, human, I'll give you that. But do not mistake my acceptance for weakness. There will be no turning back once we embark on this journey. If you are truly committed to this alliance, then we will see what comes of it. But if you fail... She let the threat hang in the air, unspoken but understood. The human nodded quickly, feeling the gravity of her words. I understand. I won't fail. The queen's eyes softened just a fraction. Then let us begin, she said, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. Let's see if your offer was worth my time. And with that, the queen stood, her immense presence filling the room. The human had made his offer, and somehow against all odds it had been accepted. But now the real challenge began. Would this unexpected acceptance lead to the change he had promised? The days following the queen's acceptance of the human's proposal were filled with intense moments of both uncertainty and discovery. What had begun as a bold offer, a mere suggestion from a humble human, was now becoming something more profound. The young man had been thrust into the heart of an alien empire, surrounded by individuals whose power, wisdom, and ambitions far outstripped his own. Yet, in some strange twist of fate, he had caught the attention of the alien queen, and to his astonishment, had earned her trust. It was not an easy journey. The human found himself constantly tested, not only by the queen, but by the complex and ancient systems that governed her empire. At first, their conversations were purely intellectual, a meeting of two minds, each probing the limits of the other's ideas. The queen, though intrigued, was cautious. She observed him closely, watching every word, every action, searching for cracks in his resolve. The human, on the other hand, was aware that his words and actions now carried a weight they had never held before. One of the first challenges the human faced was the queen's counsel, The leaders of her empire, seasoned generals, advisors, and scholars, were not pleased with her decision to entertain such an alliance. They had served her for centuries, following her commands without question, and they saw the human's presence as a threat. To them, he was a mere outsider, an insignificant being whose promises of change seemed nothing more than empty words. One such council meeting was a turning point. The human was invited to attend. His presence meant to signal his growing importance in the Queen's plans. As he entered the grand hall where the council was held, he could feel the weight of their eyes upon him, cold, calculating, and suspicious. These were the most trusted of the Queen's advisors, individuals who had risen through the ranks of her empire by following the same old ways. They saw the Queen's decision to welcome a human as a betrayal of everything they had worked for. The Queen, seated at the head of the long obsidian table, regarded them with an air of authority. "We are gathered here today to discuss the future of our empire," she began, her voice steady but firm. "This human, though different from us, has presented us with an opportunity. We will not ignore it." The room fell silent, the tension palpable. The human stood beside the Queen, aware of the disdainful glances being cast in his direction. One of the generals, a towering figure clad in black armor, leaned forward and spoke in a deep, resonant voice. "My Queen, this is madness. We are the most powerful species in the galaxy. We have no need for the counsel of a mere human. His kind has no place in the history of our people." The human's heart raced, but he forced himself to remain composed. This was the moment he had been waiting for, his chance to prove that his ideas could be more than just words. He took a deep breath and addressed the council. "I may be human," he said, his voice steady but full of conviction. "But I offer you more than just my words. I offer you the potential for something greater. Your empire has stood for centuries, but there is a limit to what can be achieved through conquest and dominance alone. What I propose is not a rejection of your strength, it is an evolution of it." The council members exchanged looks, their expressions skeptical. The general snorted, clearly unimpressed. "And how do you propose to achieve this, human? Your species is young, your technology primitive. You have no experience in ruling an empire like ours." "I don't need to rule," the human replied, meeting the general's gaze without flinching. "I offer a partnership, a chance for us to grow together, to learn from each other. I may not have your strength, but I have the ability to inspire change, and that is something your people have long forgotten how to do." The room was filled with an uneasy silence. The human knew he had struck a nerve. He wasn't just challenging the Queen's counsel. He was challenging the very foundation of their society. His words were dangerous, suggesting that the Queen's empire, despite its power, might be stagnating. And in truth, he wasn't entirely wrong. The Queen herself had admitted that she was tired of the endless cycle of war and conquest. But his words, though provocative, weren't enough to sway the council. The general's voice boomed again. "You speak of change, but change requires more than just promises. It requires action. And I see no action here. If this human is allowed to remain in our midst, he will only bring ruin." The Queen's eyes narrowed, her expression hardening. She stood up from her throne, silencing the room with a simple gesture. "Enough," she commanded, her voice resonating through the chamber. "This is not a debate. I have made my decision. The human stays." The council members exchanged nervous glances, but none dared to speak out again. The Queen's word was law, and for now the human had earned her protection. But he knew that the real battle was far from over. The council's resistance was just the beginning. There would be other forces, both within the Queen's empire and beyond, that would test his resolve. As the meeting came to an end, the human left the council chamber with a sense of unease. The Queen had defended him, but at what cost? Her empire was built on a foundation of strength and dominance, and even she could not escape the weight of her people's expectations. He had challenged their way of life, and now there would be consequences. Later that evening, as the human sat in his quarters, he received a summons from the Queen. He had grown used to these late-night calls, though each one filled him with a mixture of anticipation and dread. He arrived at her private chambers to find her standing by a window, looking out over the darkened landscape of her empire. Her back was turned to him, but he could sense the tension in her posture. "You did well today," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "I only spoke the truth," the human replied. The queen turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "And the truth is often a dangerous weapon." The human nodded. He understood now that the path ahead was not going to be easy, but it was a path that he had chosen, and one that he would walk alongside the queen, whether she truly trusted him or not. The bond between them was growing, but so was the tension. In the shadow of the queen's empire, the human realized that the stakes were higher than ever before. The true test of their alliance had only just begun. The empire was on the edge of a new dawn. The queen had seen it for herself, how a single human, so small in comparison to her vast empire, had managed to weave his way into the very fabric of her future. Yet, despite his courage and his promises, she still wondered if it was all just a fleeting moment in the grand scheme of things, a hope that would fade as quickly as it had come. The human had brought her a new vision, a way forward that was as risky as it was enticing, but she had long ruled with caution, and such radical ideas were not easily embraced. As days turned into weeks, the tensions in the palace grew. The queen's advisors, still skeptical, began to grow restless. They watched the human with growing suspicion, each passing moment marking their belief that his presence was more of a danger than a solution. In private chambers, whispers of rebellion began to surface. The power structures that had kept the empire together for so long were now on the verge of crumbling, and the queen had no clear answer for how to mend the rift. Her people were divided, some fiercely loyal to her, others to the old ways, fearing the changes the human suggested. The human, however, remained undeterred. He had done everything he could to show that change was possible, that his offer was not just a dream but something tangible. And despite the queen's deep doubts, he had earned her respect. He had seen her vulnerability, her weariness from centuries of rule, and through it all he had remained committed to his vision. But was it enough to bring about real change? One fateful night, as the two stood together in the queen's private garden, the night air thick with the weight of the unspoken, the human spoke again. His voice was soft but full of resolve. "You know," he said, "you are the queen of this empire, but even a queen needs to let go sometimes. You don't have to carry the burden of the galaxy on your shoulders alone. Together we can build something new, something greater." The queen looked at him, her piercing eyes softer than usual. She had seen the truth in his eyes countless times, but now, in this moment, something deeper resonated within her. She had ruled with absolute power for centuries, commanding respect and fear from all who crossed her path. But in the quiet, unassuming human, she saw something she had long forgotten: hope. "I've lived my life in a way that has always been driven by the need for control," she said quietly, almost to herself. "But control, it doesn't bring peace. It doesn't bring fulfillment." The human took a step closer, offering her a look of understanding. "I know it's hard. The weight of leadership, the expectations, the battles you've fought, those things can consume you. But there's another way. We don't have to fight anymore. We can create a future together. It's not about taking control. It's about giving people the chance to be part of something bigger than themselves." For a long moment, the queen said nothing. She stood there, staring into the distant horizon, her mind a maze of thoughts and emotions. She had spent so long trying to maintain an iron grip on the empire, thinking that was the only way to secure her legacy. But what had it all been for? Power? Control? At what cost? "I've been fighting all my life," she murmured. "Fighting for something I thought I needed. But maybe what I really needed was something else." The human nodded. "You needed a change. And now you have the opportunity to make that change. Not just for you, but for everyone." The silence between them was heavy, but there was no need for words anymore. The queen knew what needed to be done. Her empire had been built on endless war and conflict, but it was time to lay down those arms and rebuild. not with the iron fist that had once ruled her people, but with compassion, understanding, and the promise of a brighter future. The next morning, the queen made a monumental decision. She summoned the leaders of her empire, the council, the generals, and all those who held power. The humans stood beside her as she addressed the assembly, the air charged with anticipation. "I have ruled with power," the queen began, her voice steady and unwavering. "But it is not power that will lead us forward. It is unity. It is compassion. It is a vision for a future where all of us, regardless of species, can live together in peace." The room was still, no one daring to speak. The queen continued, her words echoing through the chamber, each syllable carrying the weight of 1,000 years of history. "I have decided to step away from the throne, not because I no longer wish to lead, but because I believe the time has come for a new kind of leadership. A leadership that doesn't come from dominance or fear, but from understanding and collaboration." The council members exchanged confused glances. The general stood in stunned silence. But the queen was resolute. "I have chosen to stand with the human who offered me a chance for something greater. Together we will lead this empire into a new era." The human looked at her, his heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. He had not only gained the queen's trust, but he had earned her respect, and in turn, he had helped her find the courage to change the course of her empire. And so the ultimate miracle unfolded. The queen's decision to embrace change, to embrace the future, marked the beginning of a new era for her empire. The people, initially skeptical, began to see the wisdom in her choice. They saw the humanity in the queen's decision and realized that the future could indeed be different from the past. The queen and the human worked together, not as ruler and subject, but as equals, partners in the pursuit of a better world. They brought peace where there had been war, unity where there had been division, and through their shared vision the galaxy was transformed. The human had brought a miracle to the queen, one that she had never expected, but one that she would cherish for the rest of her life. And in turn, the queen had given him the opportunity to change not only her empire but the very fabric of the universe itself. As they stood together on the balcony overlooking the vast empire, the queen looked at the human and finally said, "You were right all along. Change is possible, and it starts with us." The human smiled, knowing that their journey was just beginning. They had come a long way, but the road ahead was filled with infinite possibilities. Together, they would shape a future where peace and unity reigned supreme, a future born from a bold offer and an unexpected miracle.